everyone, and welcome to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy at TV. In case you're not a subscriber yet, please do subscribe. Just press the subscribe button as well as turn on the notification bell so that you can get notifications when we upload our videos. Don't also forget to subscribe and join, follow, like our other social media platforms. Of course, you're seeing it right about now. Don't also forget to share this video across your platforms. Enjoy the video. Welcome back. Victor Alikor is joining me right now, a development economist and a policy analyst. Hello, Victor. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Nancy. Thank you for always being a good host.
Thank you. Where do you want to start? So many things. Should I hand over actually. To you? A lot. I think actually. We should. The news yesterday around IMF, I don't know if we should go through it again because I did a thorough explanation during my intro. But yep. What are your views about it concerning government's perhaps fiscal discipline and all the hula baloo around it yesterday?
Fantastic. But I think your explanation was exhaustive. To provide a bit of context, Nigeria is still owing $144 trillion naira, in our domestic and foreign debt. But then the case of what happened yesterday is similar to somebody who was asked to die either by hanging or by shooting. And whichever option you choose, you're still going to die at the end of the day. But I think it wasn't.
You're still going to die.
Yes. So for those of us who are development economists who understand that despite Nigeria clearing that of IMF, we still have a lot of debt obligation to a lot of lenders. I wasn't moved by that headline, although it's a little bit of a credit to the current administration. But the key issue is if you look at the budget of restoration, 2025 national budget of about 54.99 trillion, about nearly 30% of that amount of money will be spent on debt servicing. And like you rightly mentioned, it will impact our expenditure on key aspects of the economy like health, education, and other infrastructure. So for me, I wasn't too excited because I knew it was just something on the surface. But it's also good to give credit to the current administration for them.
I think the other thing that the government also, I don't know if they did, but the thing that I failed to see is that those loans or the RFI facility, the $3.4 billion was brought in for something during COVID loans to help us fight the economy, not just even the economic distress and some of the things.
Yeah, for economic resilience and all that.
The issue also is about, were there measurable improvement perhaps in health infrastructure? You know, because we're talking about how much we got. What is, where are the dividends of how we spent it? I hope you understand what I'm saying. So nobody's talking about that.
It has always been the biggest elephant in the room. For me as an economist, I know there is no offense in borrowing. People even borrow to run businesses. But the key issue there is what you do with the monies you have borrowed. Because bearing in mind that there's a trade-off when you borrow, either in the short term or in the long run. But what Nigerians are asking is the development that Nigerians have seen from the COVID-19 loan in 2019, 2020, is it commensurate with the level of improvement we have seen in our healthcare sector, in education, access to credit for the COVID-19 relief loans they gave to a lot of people and all that. So Nigerians we are not seeing value for the money we're borrowing. These are the big elephants in the room. And that's why a considerable number of us would sometimes criticize government's ability to borrow, not because it's not necessary for them to borrow, but like you said, fiscal discipline is missing. Both at the national level and for the subnational, for the state and local government. We see frivolities, we see even the removal of fuel subsidy again. Monies from these initiatives have not yielded the value Nigerians expected. And these are the big issues that Nigerians are questioning. But it's sad that these numbers are swelling. It's sad that Nigerians have to, if even the division, I think somebody did one time, is roughly about 400 to 500 or 600 per Nigerian, if you look at our current debt profile. And while we continue to take these loans, the value we see is not there, it's not commensurate, it's not even close to the loan amount we collect. And again, there's certain conditions attached to those loans, like the one you read out, the SDRO, which we still have to pay around 190 billion in the next 4 years to IMF. So These are some of the questions Nigerians are asking. And when we take loans, whether we take it for business, for people that do business, you want to see that you get the best value from that loan. That's the big issue, Nancy.
Just like I mentioned at the beginning, it doesn't necessarily mean that our debt profile, you know,
is better off per
yes,
se.
is better off per se. And very instructive what you actually said, because if we take a look at even the number or the figure of debt that we are owing, 144 trillion naira, that's also quite huge. $94 billion according to the GMO in December 2024. And that could still be rising because that's December 2024. We've not been able to see the figures so far. What does it really mean, especially for Nigerians, which I did say at the beginning? You know, how have we seen the fiscal discipline or not discipline now, fiscal management of this administration? What would you say about fiscal management of this administration? Because for anything positive, the administration rejoices. The Fitch ratings of B, this now, what else again? Surplus. What else again? What has been the positive? You know, our macros are a bit stabilizing and all of that. You listen to government officials and they are telling you this on a regular basis. They are reacting it, and I'm saying to the ministers, please, can you tell me something else? Because if I ask you a question, I already know what you are going to answer because you've been giving me those answers regularly. There's nothing new. But what does it really say about fiscal management of this administration?
So this is both for the federal, state, and local government. If I give in a scale of 1 to 10, fiscal management, I'll give them 1/10. And
for
clearly,
who, federal government?
Across board, across the 3 tiers of government.
Okay.
My reason is clear. If you look at, like you said, fiscal discipline, the National Assembly has gotten the highest budget in the history as a result of after fuel subsidy was removed. It meant that money saved from removal of subsidy was not actually meant to focus on certain development priorities. It was actually meant to be reshared among perhaps the elite, the National Assembly, and perhaps the state governors, which at the state level we have also not seen development that is commensurate with the revenue they receive now. So fiscal discipline, we have seen where they have requested for a new jet for Mr. President, which they actually bought. And some quarters, at some point, they requested for Mr. Vice President to get a new jet. So whether or not we like it, we have also seen the highest number of ministers, I think in the history of Nigeria, about within 47
to 50 or 49.
Nearly 50,
yes,
49, 50 ministers. It means nobody is serious about cutting the cost of governance. We've also seen in the early, I think last year, when over, Prado Jeeps were gotten for about 160 million for National Assembly members and all that. So all of this extravagance is still there. It hasn't improved. I think it's even getting worse. I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, we heard about Mr. President saying there is a new national industrial policy, and
Nigeria First policy.
Yes. But we're hoping to see when he will use locally made vehicles. We're hoping to see when we'll prioritize Nigerian made products. First, we're hoping to see when Mr. President will jettison health tourism outside the country and use local hospitals here for us to believe that fiscal discipline, like we are made to understand, is actually true. But that has not been the case. What we are seeing is, again, mismanagement and financial rascality among the 3 tiers of government. So,
so when we are talking about debt, I also want Nigerians to understand this, because if we're talking of debt, like 144 trillion naira, it seems so, so aloof, or is there, not them. But you're an economist. If we take the debt per capita, that's like how much each Nigerian owes.
Yeah.
I did a quick calculation. So for you and me, we are owing each person owes 654,545 naira. That's what it means. So I took 220 million. Let me just be, at least the number that is general, that we are, the number of us here in the country, 220 million. So each Nigerian owes 654,545 naira. So that is why this matters and what we are discussing matters. The last time I did this, the analogy, I think sometime last year, it was around 540-something thousand naira each person. So with what we have right now, it's rising. So each Nigerian owes 654,545 naira. When I did that last year, I said, Nancy, I don't want any money. Make government go pay what they do. You know, but I'm talking about the analysis. You know what
Yeah.
I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Debt per capita, as it were. Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw a report, I think early this year. I can't remember which of the data platforms that said only 2% of Nigerians, I think about 2% of Nigerians earn above 200,000 monthly.
Yes.
So if you look at the numbers
That
you're
one is
reading
even
out,
good. Let me give you another report that, of course, has been in the public space for a very long time. About 90% of Nigerians have less than ₦500,000 in the
yeah,
bank
that was
accounts.
NDIC that
Yes,
made that.
NDIC. I don't know
I
if
saw it.
NDIC has given us
So
another
if they give
update.
us the recent one,
Yeah.
again with lower disposable income,
Yes,
you'll be surprised with the
90% of
numbers.
Nigerians. So all this money is in banks and less
Just a
than
pocket of,
$500,000.
yes. So in reality, and I think even Nigerians some Nigerians are even becoming smarter. I mean, to keep money in deposit money banks, it's not, for me, it's not savings. If you keep it after 1 year, the value of the money is dropping. So people are perhaps looking out for other investment platforms to throw their funds
But
into.
not Ponzi schemes, guys.
Certainly,
Yeah.
of course, certainly. So, but in reality, if you look at the ripple effect for vast majority of Nigerians, that's why everybody must be concerned. Whether or not you think is you're celebrating the IMF debt repayment and say, it didn't concern me. There's a trade-off most times when we take these loans. Trade-off means we have to give up certain benefits for us to take loans to meet up certain obligations. And if they are not met, again, it also has a ripple effect on us. It means Nigerians may not see quality healthcare systems. We might not be able to see quality level of education across board. It means perhaps access to credit, we might have to trade it off because we're taking loans. And again, it rubs off on everybody. So, but the key component of it is that I'm sure government at all levels must show high level of, what's the right word to use, must be careful in the management of people's resources. Again, bearing in mind, like I used to tell you, whatever they don't do this 2025, I don't see the possibility of them doing it from 2026, 2027 because of elections. But the key component of the conversation should always be that Nigerians are getting poorer. The numbers clearly showing that people are getting poorer. If you look at certain benefits accruable to Nigerians, it's also dropping. The most shocking part of it, which I saw recently, was that from 1960, when Nigeria gained independence, through the military, up until the 1990s, Nigeria had generated about 4,000 megawatt of power. And since democracy, 1999 to date, all the democratically elected presidents have only been able to generate around 1,000 to 1,500 megawatts. That is grossly embarrassing. So a huge, considerable amount of this money that borrowed for specific purposes, we need to start seeing the dividends of these debts we are collecting.
That brings me to the issue of rural poverty, or poverty, because from what you just said, I wanted us to even talk about tax reform, but in my head, I just said, let me just put this tax reform of president by one side, because what also concerns many citizens is that of poverty and the high rise of inequality in the country. You just mentioned a lot of people are getting poorer by the day. There was a World Bank report that I read a few days ago telling us that rural poverty, and I analyzed it here on the program, if people in the villages are even poorer, where supposedly food is supposed to be cheap, you know, those days they'll be like, oh, if you don't have anything to do in the urban centers, go to the village. You know, the village looked like a semblance of where you have peace, succor. Now, what are the implications of that, despite interventions? The Minister of Finance has said a few times that I've heard him talk about, okay, that interventions are ongoing. He even said it in Washington, D.C. He was telling the officials there that they are doing, what do they call it, cash transfer.
Constitutional cash transfers.
Yes, and all of that. But in the midst of all of this, more Nigerians are getting so impoverished. Where is the disconnect, for crying out loud, for God's sake? What are we doing? The poor are getting poorer. The richer are getting, not even richer, richest. Because you have billions. If they tell billions, you're seeing the kind of cases going around and all of that. One person, EFCC, one person. I'm like, now only you want to chop this thing. Do you understand? So the gap between the haves and the have-nots is so wide. What is actually the problem?
So one of the things we must establish from that report, he said 75.5%. One of the things we must establish is, if you look at the rural areas, economic activities are less because, of course, you have older people in the village. Most of the young people who are active You find them in the urban city centers where economic activities are going on faster. But the challenge is that if you look at that report, the most devastating part of it is that those in the rural communities, they lack access to a lot of even amenities we're lucky to have in the urban centers. But a key component of that report, again, reminds us that even if you're on the minimum wage, you're staying in the village, you're still below $2.15 per day. Another also depressing part of it is that if it could be this worse in the village, you can imagine what those in the city centers are actually struggling with. But the big question, the big elephant in the room around poverty is that we must toe the part of China, which they have the record to have exited over 600 to 700 million people at record time in 10 years. What did China do? They asked themselves 3 questions. First, who are the poor? Second, why are they poor? Why are they poor?
Yes.
And then the third question is, what do they need?
Yes.
So if you ask yourself these 3 questions in Nigeria, who are the poor? We last did our census in 2006. So most of the data they're using to do these conditional cash transfers are not reliable, they are not recent. That's one. So we don't even know who the poor people are. Whether you're in the city or in the rural area, we don't know who they are.
Urban poor, rural poor.
Do you understand the point? That's one. And then secondly, why are they poor? They are poor clearly because of government policies, whether or not we admit government policies. And again, remember, like I've told you, Nancy, in the past, we have a national development plan, 2021 to 2025, as designed by President Buhari. Whether or not he's not in power anymore, it's the same party. And 2 components of that national development plan says they will exit about 35 people out of poverty.
In 10 years?
Yes. No, within 4 years.
No,
actually,
yes, 4 years.
To
but President Buhari said then that he would exit 100 million Nigerians in 10 years.
10 years. So 35 million people out of poverty and then create 21 million jobs. But if you look at this, the policy by this current administration, do you think it supports that national development plan? Clearly, it has been jettisoned. I think they're actually developing one, which they will release later part of this year or next year. But the key question is, and another thing is, what do they need? And when the Minister of Finance is saying they are giving conditional cash, come on. What we see clearly is conditional cash transfers that have turned to conduit pipe for corruption. I've told you that Chaguri one time requested for data of those who have been paid the conditional cash transfers, and nobody responded to him till date. What we are seeing is government sharing bags of rice. Is this what the poor people need? And one fact we must establish, Nancy, is that exiting people from poverty is not the responsibility of the government alone. They cannot shoulder it alone. So we're seeing a huge disconnect between the government and the private sector. Private sector is a key component.
Private sector also has to be healthy to be able to
exit. Do you understand the point? So we need a vibrant private sector. But the private sector we have today, they are struggling because they are struggling to even survive. Issues around electricity, issues around government policies, issues around poverty, issues around unstable foreign exchange rates are even stifling the private sector. So how can they even come into support? So for me, Nancy, if we must exit a considerable amount of Nigerians out of poverty, the government must be honest, which I've not seen that honesty from the government at all tiers of government. And we must begin to walk the talk. There are a lot of things we need to do, but perhaps maybe in the course of the conversation, we'll continue with what we need to do.
No, let's go over to it, and let's go straight into it. Dovetailing on this question of mine, which is around fiscal tools, because government have some fiscal tools to be able to make people get out of poverty, as it were. The tax reforms now have been passed, as it were. We'll be waiting for the president to sign. But let's also take a look at the removal of the subsidies. I'm going back to that. Because even when I was in Washington, D.C., the IMF all the time, remove subsidies, remove subsidies. And I stood up and I asked them a question. Excuse me, please. That for those of you that are in the developed world, you actually also make subsidies look demonic. Subsidies are not entirely bad. When you are saying, okay, lift your people out of poverty, how would you lift your people out of poverty if you don't subsidize a few things? And I told them, I said, we're in America right now. America is the father of subsidies.
Yes.
So why are subsidies being demonized or subsidies being looked at as a bad thing? Now, where am I going to? You remove subsidies on fuel. There are talks now around subsidy removal around electricity. And I understand that we need to have a free market. Come on, guys, because I know that some economists like you will call for me now. But the thing that I'm talking about is the chicken and the egg. you have a lot of poor people. What kind of fiscal tools? Are you saying that perhaps fiscal tools like tax reform will easily lift these people out of poverty? Or direct subsidies? I'm not talking of cash transfer. I'm talking of subsidies, for example, like that akara seller in the village, for example, that will buy firewood or that would have gone to buy a liter of fuel to put in a firewood to sell akara. That liter of fuel now is about 1,000 naira. Before it was less than that. She will be able to do that better and train her children. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So how do government really redesign their fiscal tools to help serve the poor?
So one fact we must establish was that the subsidy removal was not for the common man. Look at countries that have similar socioeconomic variables like Nigeria, India, Pakistan, Brazil, name them, China. They have one form of subsidy or the other. So it's surprising in Nigeria when we want to toe purely the capitalist line to say, let's purely run a free market economy. We can't run a free market economy in a society where vast majority of your population, majority of your citizens are poor. Where's even the disposable income for you to even run the free market economy? It's not there. Nigeria's economic system were taught traditionally it's mixed economy. So you must have that intersection of socialism and capitalism. But trying to remove all forms of subsidy, and then when you remove, again, you're not even adopting a phased approach to this removal of subsidy. For instance, in the electricity sector, energy sector, they did the Band A first. They removed for Band A, and others have. Band A is paying cost-reflective tariffs and all that. But removal of subsidy, you removed it outrightly. There was no modulations. There was no buffers for the poor. And people say they are making relief programs. What relief programs? Do they have database? Are they transparent? Are they not conduit pipes for corruption? But again, for one, I'm not an economist who's sitting here just to support. I kicked against removal of subsidy the moment Mr. President announced it. And on the 5th of June, 2023, I wrote an article that Nigeria, on business day, that Nigeria is not mature for removal of subsidy. And my options were that we can toe the path of taxation as an option to removal of subsidy, because the impact I feel will be less on the economy than that. But again, the removal of subsidy, we have seen that it has not been commensurate in terms of fiscal discipline that we talked about earlier. Because this money has been redirected to the state governors, who is not doing enough to show the value for money.
And we're not seeing it.
And we're not seeing it. So the point is, why did we remove the fuel subsidy from the onset? But to IMF, like you mentioned, IMF, what they do is advisory. I don't blame them. They advise you, it's left for you to either accept or not. We told the part of accepting the IMF's policies. And the World Bank, again, their sister organization, is coming back to let you know that 75% of your people are poor as a result of some of the policies you made. That you implemented the policy, but you didn't do it properly. So it's one way. I mean,
sometimes
Nancy,
those of you that are economists, it's difficult to understand.
Nancy, but truth be told, one truth we must establish here is, Mr. President, I can tell you, has smart and intelligent people in his economic team.
What are those?
I shouldn't mention them. They are smart people. From the fiscal side, from the monetary side, they are smart, intelligent people. But the problem we have most times is that economists would advise, politicians would adjust the policies to win the next election.
Just like we are seeing now.
Do you understand the point? So people are advising Mr. President. I believe so. People are advising him. And then perhaps there's a few sycophants around him who might not want to tell him the truth. But I believe people are advising him. And that's where that's where the role of the royal fathers and our religious leaders comes in. These are people they expect to tell truth to power.
Okay. I think we'll leave it at that, Victor. Thank you for your insights, as always.
Thank you.
I don't want to say...
Thank you.
It's okay, Sha. Let's put it like that in our local balance. I hope you all have understood what I'm saying. At least we've been on for the last few minutes. I've been speaking with Victor Alikor, policy analyst and development economist, and we've been talking about the burning economic issues. I am Nancy Naji, be the best you can be, and be the change that you want to see. The news AIT reports is up next. Bye now. Thank you for making it up to this minute watching the video. Thank you all. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy TV. Like, follow all our other social media platforms where we keep you up to speed with fantastic interviews, as well as markets, personal finance, business, and economy information. This is the best place to be. I'll see you all again in the next video.